Hi, it's Mike Seeley with Now Demystified, and today we're here with Judge Gray, who is the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. We thought we'd get you some information to help demystify this election for you. Let me get right into it. There's a lot of voters saying that their vote doesn't matter this year, and in California that's kind of particularly true. Is there a way that could matter?
Well, Mike, it matters a great deal. Depending upon any point of view that you want to discuss, first of all, any time that you vote for the lesser of two evils, you still get evil, and I think that that's something people need to focus on. Also, if you're a Republican and Romney doesn't represent you, then a vote for Romney is basically a wasted vote because you're telling the Republican Party this type of candidate on this type of issues is okay. And if it's not true, then that's a wasted vote. Same thing if Obama and you're a Democrat does not represent you. And finally, of course, here you're talking California, Obama's going to win California. That's not exactly a revealing thing to say. So a vote for Romney in California is a wasted vote. Vote for Governor Gary Johnson. We really are in the political mainstream. We're both financially responsible and socially tolerant, which is where most of the voters are as well. And that if we just get 5% of this election nationwide, then we will be able to get federal matching funds. We'll be able to be on most ballots around the country without having to go through all of these gyrations. So we'll be able to represent the mainstream. And then the radical elements on each side, the Republicans and Democrats, will actually be forced more into the middle. This is a critically important vote. Governor Gary Johnson for President 2012.
So you're saying there that whether you're Democrat or Republican, if you vote your side, that will give a little more pressure on them to come more to the center, you're saying?
Well, it really will. You know, my sister is a Democrat, lives in San Francisco, and she's telling her friends, Democratic friends, look, Obama's going to win even without our vote. So our vote for Obama is a wasted vote because he's going to win regardless. So vote for Governor Gary Johnson, and that will tend to bring the radical elements more toward the middle, which is what everybody wants to have happen. And you'll be able to get us that 5%. It will be the beginning of the end of the two-party system. Everyone will benefit from that, except, of course, the Republicans and Democrats.
I had heard you say that had you been in the vice presidential debate, that you probably would have won the election. If you were in that, what question would you have asked the vice president?
Well, there's so many. You know, really, why are we fighting these wars all around the world? We can't afford it. It's ineffective. We can't do it. And why are we continuing to put our troops in harm's way? I was up at Stanford University not long ago and actually spoke to a man who was a big guy, and he was wearing a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star on his suit coat. And he said, Judge Gray, I was in the Marines in Desert Storm. Please be our voice. We are willing to sacrifice. We're willing even to lay down our lives, but it's got to mean something. It's got to be for the right thing. And we're sending our troops. I'm the only one who is, of the six of us running for president or vice president, that's been in the military. I've seen this. We speak for these folks. They're willingly serving, but we've got to make sure that it's a serious issue and it's a security threat to the United States, and it's not. So, Mr. Vice President Biden, why are we continuing to put our troops into areas in which our security issues are not at risk?
That's a good point. Now, his logical answer would have followed. What would you have followed up with? And as far as our military, how many should we have overseas? How many should we pull back? Or should we keep everyone there?
Well, I would keep our military at the same strength, but we have something of 900 to 1,000 military bases in foreign countries today. If they're necessary for our security, terrific, keep them there. If they're not, let's spend the money home here in California or Colorado or New Jersey instead of halfway around the world. You know, there's no reason for us to have those troops in so many different areas. Again, if they're helping our security, reinforce them. If not, let's bring those troops home.
That's a good point. Now, one of the biggest issues is the economy. What can you do different that can bring more jobs to Americans?
Well, that's a really important issue because neither Obama nor Romney have a clue. Basically, we will repeal the income tax. Now, what's the connection? Our goods today have a competitive disadvantage because before they leave our shores as exports, they paid taxes on them. Income taxes by the companies, payroll taxes, and then they have a competitive disadvantage around the world competing with goods that have not. Same thing in reverse if you have products coming in from other countries around the world that have not paid taxes on them, competing with our domestic goods that have, and then everybody pays the same sales taxes. If we actually were to repeal the income tax, it would level the playing field, and then they'd all pay the same. retail consumption tax. I was actually speaking to a man on a plane not long ago who's an executive from Nike, you know, the shoe manufacturer. His eyes really got big and he said, Judge Gray, this is sensational. Hadn't thought of this before. If we were to repeal the income tax, most companies would bring their manufacturing back to the United States of America. That means millions and millions of jobs. It's basically a reverse outsourcing. It will stimulate our economy, bring in millions of jobs. Romney and Obama don't have a chance. Why? Because the Republicans and Democrats in Congress get huge amounts of political power by voting for tax breaks for their wealthy constituents. They're not going to want to give them up. You get Libertarian Governor Johnson in there, will get so much attention, such a mandate will bring this home for the benefit of the United States of America.
And it's interesting, just a couple of years ago, we spent nearly $1 trillion saving some banks here. Now, lots of us speculated that that was okay, it didn't do any good to it, it was a dismal failure. What could you have done with $1 trillion, or how would you have handled that?
Well, for heaven's sake, first of all, and Ron Paul was very instrumental in getting this audit of the Fed. I didn't know this. We had actually spent trillions of dollars not only in our own banks, on foreign banks, and helping them supposedly stabilize the world's economic system. Trillions of our dollars. The answer is, look, we have a national debt. When Obama took over, and I'll give to him the credit that he took over at a time that was really a very difficult issue with 2 foreign wars and our economy. We had a $10 trillion national debt then. Today it's $16 trillion. That is the biggest security threat to our country, is a failing economy. We cannot continue to borrow and print this money. We simply keep that and simply not create such debt. That's what Governor Gary Johnson will do.
Now, Governor Gary Johnson, did he have success in his previous administration?
Well, that's a softball question if I ever heard one, because you know that he left the state of New Mexico after his 2 terms with $1 billion surplus, actually vetoed more excessive spending laws as best we can determine than all other 49 governors combined. We need that for the United States of America. And as he says, chuckling, oh, everyone is predicting we'll have riots in the streets and children will be starving. None of that happens. We have such an obese federal government today. It's all this pork, it's all this stuff that's been done that is not necessary, that we'll cut that back and just do what is necessary for our government and bring it back to where it should be.
You're on a long campaign trail right now, and through that people get worn down. I'm kind of leading up to a question about health care. A lot of us, young, middle-aged, and old, have different needs for health care, and none of them seem to be being met. Do you have a plan for that?
You know something? I was in the Peace Corps. I care about people. We're going to have a safety net for our people, but the difference is the government would be the last resort instead of the first resort. So what you do basically is you divide our country into 3 groups. The first group, pretty much like us. We can take care of ourselves, get the government out of it. The second group are the people that cannot take care of themselves. And they are out there, and I know. I was on the mental health calendar for a while. I've seen that there are some of these people. And what you do then is put in government clinics, medical clinics, where yes, it will be expensive, but we pay money for doctors, nurses, medicines, clinics, instead of administration, bureaucracy, and fraud. And we can do that. And then the third group are those in between, and they can come to the medical clinics if they want to, but it'll be a higher copay. It'll really work. You can call it socialized medicine if you want to. I'm not uncomfortable with that. I lived in socialized medicine for a number of years in the United States Navy, and it worked quite well. You know, my son was born at the Naval Hospital in Guam. So we will do this, combining those with the Veterans Administration hospitals, military hospitals, and then just have these clinics for our people. We'll spend the money again on medicines, get rid of all of this government intrusion into health care for the rest of us.
I'm approaching that age where retirement's coming in off the horizon. And I was trying to set up my own retirement, but I always heard about Social Security growing up, and I've also heard that it's not going to be there when I get there.
It's not.
Is Social Security going to survive?
No, not the way it's going. When it went in the 30s, we had hundreds of workers for every 1 person that was eligible. Today it's less than 3 to 1. Give us another 6 or 7 years, it'll be 2 to 1. It's simply not viable. And these people in the government have been lying to us for generations. Why? Because there's no lockbox, there's no fund, it's a pay-as-you-go system, and to the degree that there's a lockbox, it's simply filled with government IOUs that are worth absolutely nothing. Nevertheless, we're libertarians. We believe in the sanctity of contract. We're going to make sure that all people get exactly what they've been promised. How? I don't know what the age restrictions would be. First of all, though, we probably would increase the eligibility rate from 67 to 70 because the life expectancy is so much longer now. But otherwise, let's say 50 years of older and greater, you'll be able to receive everything you've been promised. 40 to 50, you'll be able to opt out of the system if you want. You'll receive a payment from the government of a certain amount of money, depending on how much you've put into it. Then you'll go into a privatized system. The people 40 and below will go into the privatized system right away. What does that mean? You'll continue to pay these monies in, but in various funds that are overseen by very conservative, non-political experts that find conservative investments that will almost no risks, but will be able to pay off. And I tell you, had that happened to me when I'd been paying into the system instead of Social Security, I'd have 4 or 5 times the amount of money at my disposal. The big question then is, okay, Gray, not so fast. I'm sure it's going through your mind, Mike. What about the system? You're going to have fewer people paying into it. Where's that pot of money going to be to pay off these other people from 40 and above? And the answer is, there's so much land in our country today, administered by the Bureau of Land Management, that is actually inappropriate to have the federal government own it. Let's take it, figure out where they are, take it 1/10 of it, and actually auction off to the highest bidder 1/10 of it each year for the next 10 years, and put that money into a fund that will bail out Social Security. Then, of course, people that own property take better care of it than people that rent it. We all know that. And they'll start paying property taxes, which are now not going to the states. Everybody will win except, of course, the federal government. It's where we would need to go.
I gave you a softball question. I want to give you a high, hard, fast.
Hit me hard.
Okay. Let's say you were elected, your ticket. There's challenges today with the Republican working with the Democratic Congress and vice versa. How would you work with a non-libertarian Congress by a long ways?
That is still a softball question, Mike, because, you know, we're going to give the American people what they want, what they need, what they crave, and what they will demand if they see that it's viable. And that is, we'll put in a coalition government. We'll put in a government, of course, of highly placed independents and libertarians, but also Republicans and Democrats, as long as they agree with our approach of being financially responsible and socially tolerant. And then, when we have this selfish politics going on, or I call it bipolar politics, really, we'll have Republicans go talk to your colleagues, Democrats go talk to your colleagues, get them on board. This is a good idea, embrace it. We'll give credit to anybody that has a good idea, anybody that embraces a good idea, so that we can work for America. If we had been in these debates, people would have realized that. I'm convinced that we would have won this election. Now it's going to wait until 2016, where if I have anything to say about it, Governor Gary Johnson and I will run again, and we'll win.
Okay. I have a lot of friends who have children in the services, in the armed forces. They're always concerned about that. Of course, we want a safe America, we want a safe world. How do you plan to deal with that?
We need to keep a strong military. In fact, I was in Vietnam. Actually, it was very few people in the history of the U.S. Navy have been awarded a combat action ribbon on a training cruise. That's kind of what happened to me. But I've seen what happens when you put our forces into combat without being prepared. That is not going to happen under the Johnson-Gray administration. But we are going to keep our troops only fighting when our security interests are at risk. You know, it is absolutely untenable to have our troops continue to be in Afghanistan, for example, where we're simply not able to accomplish anything anymore. It's anything that we could possibly accomplish, we've already done. It's time to bring our troops home now. You can't bring more troops home in body bags without being able to look at the parents and saying this was for a good cause. It's not true. We're going to bring them home now.
One final thing for people watching or listening that just haven't made up their mind, or have made up their mind they're not going to vote. Could you just reiterate why it's so critical that they should vote?
You know, I honestly believe, and in fact I speak to colleges, students, tell them, I voted in every election since I became eligible, and I'm proud of that. Voted in absentee in the Peace Corps, in the military, etc., and still am voting every time. If you don't vote, you're giving up your right to complain from my standpoint. And people do listen. And if, again, you're a Republican and you vote for someone that does not represent you in the Republican Party, you're telling your Republican Party that this candidate is okay. Register your dissent. We will never change things until you realize that politicians are excellent at followership, and they will follow where the votes are. And if they see that you are there and voting with them, they'll continue in the same direction. But if they see that you're there, you're one of their club, and you vote against them, they will get the message and they will change.
Well, thank you very much for your time here, and good luck on your campaign, which I hear goes off into the north.
We're working on them. It's the most exciting thing that's happened to me since the birth of my children. Gary Johnson is the guy. I would never do this for anyone else I can think of. Governor Gary Johnson will be the greatest president that we could possibly have during these circumstances. We will regain that prosperity, that equal opportunity, and that freedom that literally is slipping through our fingers today. Governor Gary Johnson is the guy. Nice to be with you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
A very interesting concept there by Judge Gray, the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. A vote for them could influence the major parties. In other words, every vote counts. Even if you're a Republican and not sure you like all of their ways, or a Democrat and don't like all of their policies, perhaps a vote for the Libertarians could help bring them more to what you like, a balanced budget, evidenced by Governor Johnson having done that previously. So consider your vote carefully this year, as your vote does count, no matter what state you're voting in. Thanks for watching, and look forward to seeing our next Now Demystified.